beautifully sets us up for what we're digging into here today, because we are journeying in this Lenten journey, right? We're heading towards that Holy Week, that beautiful Passion Week of what the Son of God would do on our behalf, that he loves us so much. But before that, we get this beautiful foreshadowing of all of that to come with Jesus. We get it through the people of Israel, the Hebrews, as they're ensnared in slavery, as they are captured and needing deliverance. And that's where we went week number 1. We saw literally the slavery of God's people. They were slaves to Egypt. It was a reality. For 400 years, they were slaves in Egypt. And yet, God was up to something. Not always our timing, for sure. And then God's going to call this unlikely hero, if you will, an unlikely deliverer. His name's Moses, who literally was saved through the waters as well, right? Floated down the Nile, adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, this unlikely hero who becomes a murderer by murdering an Egyptian who is beating one of his own fellow Hebrews. The Hebrews, his own people, who turn against him and chase him out of town. That guy, God's going to say, I'm going to use you. In the midst of all of that turmoil, in the midst of all of that tension and all that stress, and he shows up to Moses in the form of a burning bush. God's going to call Moses in a remarkable way as the bush is on fire, but it does not burn up. It's holy ground because God is present, and God begins to communicate in a way that Moses could physically hear, audibly. God was talking to him and calling him. And if we recall, in this process, Moses had every excuse in the book. Do you remember this? See, God calls to him, and Moses answered, "What if they, the people, do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?" Then the Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. The Lord said, "Throw it on the ground." Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." So Moses reached out, took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. "This," said the Lord, "is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you." Then the Lord said, "Put your hand inside your cloak." And so Moses put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow. "But now, put it back into your cloak," he said. So Moses put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. See, it wasn't just for the people, the Israelites. The doubts were within Moses as well. "I'm not so sure, Lord. Are you sure you're calling me? This is a call. Are you sure you shouldn't call somebody? I can't speak that well. Don't you know that? I don't know it all." All these excuses. "Don't you know that I was kicked out of Egypt because I murdered that guy? The Hebrews didn't like me. They kicked me. Are you sure you want me to go?" All the excuses. And yet this passage is packed with so much, not just in terms of the reality of the situation with Moses, but a foreshadowing of things to come as well. See, do we forget that Egypt was the most powerful place on planet Earth in this day? Pharaoh himself was considered to be a god. That's the way they looked at him. If we take a look at Pharaoh's headdress, I find it fascinating because the way this passage, God has this working out precisely. What is that on the very front of the head of Pharaoh's headdress? What is that? A snake. Interesting, huh? That God is up to something really mighty and grand, that he's declaring to hard-hearted people that he is the one true God. It's not Pharaoh. And it's not any of the other false gods that Egypt has. In fact, this message translates really well for us here today, because the false gods that we follow in our world today are not God. We set them up on pedestals. We spend time and energy and money, and we pour into these things that become false gods to us. We worship certain things in our homes, in our families, in our success, in our production, in our accumulating wealth, whatever it might be. We're good at creating idols and false idols, but yet God is here today to proclaim, those are not real. They are not God. I am the one true God. And so here's how this plays out. As God sends Moses to Pharaoh to let his people go, he says, I want you to go for 3 days to worship in the wilderness. But see, God's up to something so much better. Just listen for yourself. Exodus chapter 5. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh. You notice that? He actually followed through. So he had all the excuses in the book, but he does somewhere with courage and trust and faith step out. So he goes to Pharaoh. He says, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel says. Let my people go so that they may hold a festival for me in the wilderness. Pharaoh said, who is this Lord, this Yahweh, that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know Yahweh, and I will not let Israel go. Then they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Now let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God, or he may strike us with plagues or with the sword. Okay, warning. There's a consequence to not following the one true God. Warning. There will be plagues, and there is the sword. There is stealing, killing, and destroying. There is death and destruction when you don't follow the Lord. Time out, because now our hearts want to run to places of like, every time there's stealing, killing, destroying, death and destruction, that means I'm getting punished. It's not the way God works. What happened is, our world became very corrupt. And there is stealing, killing, and destroying. There is death and destruction because we live in a corrupt world. That is not simply because you did something wrong. We did something wrong. Humanity did something wrong. We can go all the way back to Adam and Eve if we wanted to. But for a moment, I want you to sit and ponder this. In the world in which we live, week number 1, we really dug into, where are you enslaved? Okay, if you missed that, you can go online and you can check out week number 1, week number 2. Here we come today to week number 3. Week number 1, though, is we realize that we're enslaved. We enslave ourselves following after false gods, things of this world. We look for treasures in this world versus treasures of heaven. And then week number 2, we had to really dig into, how has God spoken to you? You mean he's called you? Yeah, as the family of God, as the body of believers. We are the church, and God has called the church to live in certain ways so that it makes a difference and shines his light in this world. And now week number 3, we've got to grapple with a number of questions. We're enslaved, God has called us, and now how do we respond? Oh yeah, I've got my excuses. Oh, I do my whining just like Moses and the Israelites did. See, what have you been whining about? How are you going to respond? Can we get to the place of trust and courage and move past the fears and actually step out in faith? Like Moses and Aaron? See, how many of us want God to choose someone else to share the gospel with your neighbor rather than you? Huh? How many of us? We're like, God, can't you just use somebody else? You know what? If I can just get them over to see and meet those people can share Jesus. But I don't think that's really my thing. Do you hear the voice? Are we sounding a lot like Moses? Because we're enslaved. Because we need a deliverer. And yet, God also calls us to respond. See, God knew what he was up to. In your Lenten guide, in your Lenten journal, you can dig into all of the 10 plagues, and it's going to match it up against each Egyptian god. I'm not going to go through them this morning. But each plague that came out went through to show the power of God over these false gods of Egypt. One I want to point out, because these are just musings. It's a pondering of mine. I just find it fascinating because God was up to something way long time ago that was really foreshadowing something else through his son Jesus, and then something very impactful for us still today. So the first one, do you remember? The first plague was, Moses takes that staff, he strikes the water, and it turns into blood. Isn't it fascinating that Jesus' first miracle, I can't help but think through this, was turning water into wine. And then when Jesus is dining in the Passover meal, which takes us all the way back to the Exodus account in the 10th plague, the Passover, Jesus takes the wine and says, this is my blood. Isn't that fascinating? First plague in Egypt, water into blood. Jesus' first miracle, water into wine. And then Jesus will take the wine and say, this is my blood. Okay? The 10th miracle, I'm going to skip through this. He's in control of frogs and gnats and flies. It was really funny because of the burning bush last week. Someone came in and said, wait a minute, are you throwing a bunch of gnats at us today? Are we going to all end up with lice or have frogs jumping out today? Well, no, not. Oh, watch out. I'm just kidding. Totally kidding. We got nothing. All right. Frogs, gnats, fleas, right? Disease on livestock. We've got health, personal health, boils, hail, fire, locusts, darkness, death of the firstborn. I jump all the way to the 10th for a moment. Death of the firstborn. Does this not foreshadow God who sends his only one and only begotten Son who's going to die for you and for me? More on that next week. So now I back up to plague number 10 for a moment. Just again to show you how these things are working out. How this is processing in some precious ways. Because number 10 is Moses is going to use that stick and proclaim darkness upon the land. Even the sun, the moon, and the stars are going to go black. Wait, is God really in control of creation? Did God really create it all? And does that mean he's still in control of it all? Just look at the plagues. And the whole world became black. Look at this from Exodus chapter 10. Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand toward the sky so that darkness spreads over Egypt. Darkness that can be felt. Like a blanket. So Moses stretched out his hand towards the sky, and total darkness covered all of Egypt for 3 days. No one could see anyone else or move about for 3 days. Yet all the Israelites had light in the places where they lived. Is this fascinating? Darkness to where you could go nowhere for 3 days. Is this foreshadowing anything about darkness in a grave for how many days? 3 days? And yet the people of God had light? God's up to something here. Foreshadowing a death and a burial in a grave for 3 days. And yet it wasn't just about 3 days. It wasn't about the people of God going out into the wilderness to worship for 3 days, because God was up to something so much better. He was actually sending his people into the promised land. And as this begins to resonate in how we're going to respond, this isn't just about worshiping God for one lifetime here on this planet Earth, and that's it. But it's really about God who's bringing heaven to earth, to where we get to worship, celebrate, and praise forever. God's up to something really big. I skip forward real quick to Luke chapter 23. It was now about noon. And darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, for the sun stopped shining. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Jesus called out with a loud voice, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. When he had said this, he breathed his last. Good Friday. But I've got to pull you back. We got to get back to the Exodus account for a moment. Do you remember this image? And what is on the Pharaoh, the Egyptian Pharaoh's headdress? What's on there? A snake. Where do we first see snake in the scriptures? In the garden. In Genesis. The serpent is there and he's testing Adam and Eve. He's the one in the fruit tree. He's the one speaking and saying, did God really say? And the doubts begin to creep in. Wait a minute, you'll be more like God. You'll know the difference between good and evil. And all of a sudden Eve, who sees the fruit as looking good, eats it, turns to her husband who is there, hands it to him who did not step up and protect the family, took a bite as well. The serpent was there. Adam and Eve received their curses, and so does the snake. No wonder why so many people are afraid of snakes, huh? But now for a moment, as the gospel proclamation, we can go all the way back to Genesis 3, and we can see where there is one coming who is going to deliver us from the snake. There is one who's going to crush the serpent's head. The gospel has been proclaimed all along, leading, of course, to Jesus the Christ. But before that, we see some fascinating pieces right in this Exodus account, don't we? In fact, these fascinating pieces that lead into those 10 plagues to show how God is victorious over all the false gods of the world and how he does actually come to deliver his people and bring them into a promised land. I take you, though, to the account now, where Moses has stepped out in faith. He has shown up before Pharaoh. Pharaoh's not going to let his people go. And he has done exactly what God has called him to do. He throws the stick down. And what occurs? Check this out in Exodus 7. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, perform a miracle, then say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake. I find this fascinating that Moses isn't even carrying the stick anymore. He's like, I don't know, it turns into snakes. Aaron, you hold it, right? Okay? This is really funny stuff. Kind of sad, kind of funny. He says, okay, so you throw it down and it will become a snake. So Moses and Aaron went before Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh and the officials, and it became a snake, just like God said it would. But watch this. Oh, Pharaoh then summoned his wise men and sorcerers, and the Egyptian magicians also did the same things by their secret arts. Each one threw down his staff, and it became a snake. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Isn't this fascinating? Who's really in control? Yeah, but look at what we can do, because humanity is so great and powerful, isn't it? You think God can do that? We can do it better. Watch this. Poof, illusion, so forth. Snakes are there. Who's in control of the serpent? God. And he literally uses the serpent, yes, to do his work and bidding. And the serpent of Aaron and Moses, in command by God, not because Aaron and Moses are super special or something, they're simply following God's word. They throw it down, it turns into a snake. Pharaoh replicates this somehow in some magical, illusionary way, and yet God's controlled serpent in the hands of Moses and Aaron swallow up the other ones. And then they're going to reach out and take the tail, and it turns back into a stick. Aaron, go ahead. You can do it. What are we afraid of? Let me take you back to the account at the burning bush, when God called out Moses in the first place. The Lord said, throw it on the ground. Moses threw it on the ground. He didn't know what it was at the time, and it became a snake, and he what? Ran from it. What are you running from today? You've heard the call of God and you're fighting against it. But I don't want to. Yeah, but you know what they've done to me, God? I don't want to forgive. I don't want to reconcile. But Lord, that's going to take a lot of work. That's going to take time. That's going to take energy. That's going to take money. And we run. And when we do, we end up in places of death and destruction. We end up in places of stealing, killing, and destroying. We end up in places that are not blessed. And then we wonder why. And then we get mad at God. God, why didn't you? When he looks at us with compassion and kindness, love and forgiveness, hope, mercy, and grace. He was my child. You're so blind. What I want you to do is stoop down, reach out your hand, and grab it by the tail. Not only is God in control, he gives his people power in this world. This isn't just for prosperity. This is the purifying light of Jesus Christ that comes to conquer, to remove fears, to get rid of sin, to cleanse and purify with the promises that are eternal, because God is faithful. And when Moses does listen, he comes back from running in fear, and in a little bit of courage, I can imagine, right? It's like reaching into a hot fire. Oh yeah, the bush was on fire at this time, but not burning up. He reaches, he grabs the tail, and it's a stick again. Wow! And it wasn't enough for Moses. He then is going to proclaim, put your hand into your cloak. Watch this. which is not something that we see done in front of the Hebrews. Why? Because it might not have been for the Hebrews or for Pharaoh. It was probably for Moses. That hand. Oh, look how powerful I am. Now I can throw that staff down, turn into a snake. I grab it, it turns into a stick. Oh, disease and leprosy. We don't know what we have until it's gone. What a gift from God. Moses, put your hand back in your cloak. Oh. I know, crazy imagination. I love it, it's fun. God says, I'm in control. I'm in control. And I love you. And I love my people. And I've heard the voice of my people. What are you afraid of? Go tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And it's not just going to be for 3 days. That's what you're going to tell him. But we're going out of here. And in fact, you're going to go out of here with gold and trinkets and valuables and wealth and cattle and animals, and other people are going to come to the faith because hard hearts are going to be broken, and you're going to go into the promised land where the land is flowing with milk and honey. Follow me and watch me work. And guess what the call of the church is today? Gather in. Listen up. There is a God who's still in control and loves you. And watch him work. Your mind and your heart, when you dig into the Word daily on your own, as personal relationship with God, and then you're circling up and doing it with others, and you come and you gather and worship like this. Watch me work, he says. And then I'm sending you. You don't just come and sit and absorb and consume and that's it, but I'm sending you because I need you to make a difference in this world. I need you to go and you tell the fears, get out of here. And you help other people know, get out of here, fears, because there is one who wins. In the waters of baptism, in the beautiful sacrament of Holy Communion, we have a God who comes to us, saves us, rescues us, delivers us, and then gives us an abundant life. Meanwhile, heaven is coming to earth. And God's using his people, the church, to bring tidbits of heaven into this place so that we actually get to know what? Love. Joy, peace, kindness, forgiveness. And guess what the world needs? You living out that beautiful gift of God. How are you going to respond? What fear are you going to overcome this week? Who are you going to invite? Who are you going to forgive? Who has God put on your heart? And you're going to step out boldly in faith and trust and courage and watch God work. Amen.